of the day. Are you all ready to commit treason? The right answer. So at Minuteman National Historical Park, we commemorate the opening battle of the American Revolutionary War, April 19, 1775. So at that point, the idea of independency was something that was really not spoken of. The men who fought here, the people of Massachusetts Bay, were fighting for their rights as British subjects, the right to be heard, the right to representative government, which had been taken away from them by a cruel and unjust ministry. So they weren't trying to break away from England at that point. In fact, the Minutemen, the ones from Concord who stood here, when they mustered into service in January of 1775, signed a document where they pledged to defend His Majesty, King George III, his person, crown, and dignity. Then at the same time, to the utmost of their power and ability, they would defend each and every of their charter rights and liberties and stand ready at a minute's notice with arms and ammunition, nothing to do. So they were loyal subjects of the king, but they were not going to be pushed around by a parliament 3,000 miles away. That was the spring of 1775. We had the opening battle here, led directly into the siege of Boston, the formation of a Continental Army under the command of General George Washington, and then later operations moved to New York. Full-scale war was now a reality between Great Britain and the colonies. Was reconciliation still possible? Some hoped for it, but many believed that it was not possible. So, of course, in July 1776, on July the 2nd, Congress voted to declare independence. Now, the declaration that was adopted and signed on July the 4th was ordered to be read from the pulpit. So here in Massachusetts, it was read all throughout the summit to different communities. So as you hear the words, I want you to imagine that you've never heard this before, that independence is something new, that one day you were a British subject, and now a new day is dawned. You're now an American citizen, what that means. So with that, I turn you over to volunteer Ed Hurley.
In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive between them, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed dictates that government, long established, should not be changed for light and Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having a direct object, the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a tender world. He has refused his essential laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be attained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasion of the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolution, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions for new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary power. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salary. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislature. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the absolute same rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hand. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us. He has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injuries. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in our attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of the We must therefore acquiesce to the necessity, which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States, Congress and Senate,
novelist, please get a hear it definitely.